Hey there, brain hackers. Dave Farrow here with another Brains Behind It. This is a part of our author series, The Books Behind It. I'm talking to Bob Davies here. He has a long history as a coach, starting off basically going from Caltech all the way to the Olympics. And right now he's a speaker and an expert on performance. And he's also married, has 3 children, so you have to be an expert on psychology to be there. And one interesting thing, he's actually been on over 2,000 jumps out of an airplane. He's done skydiving over 2,000 times, yet he did have a big phobia of jumping out of an airplane, a fear of heights. So we're going to talk to him about that when we come back. Hey, Bob, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. So tell us right off the bat, since I like talking about brain stuff, tell us about how you did 2,000 jumps and yet you had a fear of heights. Now, when people say I had a fear of heights, was this clinical? Were you diagnosed, or was this just the regular fear of heights everybody has?
No, it's a regular fear of heights, and
Okay.
you're using the wrong tense there, Dave. I did not have a fear of heights. I didn't had whatever it
You
is.
still have it.
I currently have it, and it's really one of the most amazing things. You know, the philosophy, the theory is go into your fears, and I'm telling you that when I'm up at 12,500 feet, I am just scared to death.
But you've done 2,000 of these. So
Well,
the fear doesn't go away. It doesn't fade.
it does not go away. And it's interesting because now you talk about brain, you've got the prefrontal cortex, which says, I've done this 2,000 times.
Yeah.
This is safe. I know what I'm doing. There is not a chance, nothing to be worried about. And where's the brain activation? It's hitting the amygdala. It's hitting the limbic area of the brain, where my brain is freaking out, saying, "You're going to die. This is it. You're going to die." And it's really amazing that you get amygdala hijack every time you do a skydive. But that's good, because what I'm able to do is just to keep it in perspective with relaxation techniques. We can inhibit the amygdala through the prefrontal cortex. The only problem with that is it takes a lot of energy to do that.
Well, actually, this is interesting. We were talking earlier to an anxiety expert in a previous show, and this might be something you want to comment on, because her strategy, she said she could cure anxiety, and she's author of You Won Anxiety Zero. If you want to look that up. Essentially the ideal was that to try to talk yourself out of anxiety is almost impossible, because like you said, there's very few connections that go in reverse. You know, all the energy goes from the lizard brain. But she said you start with your body. You know, you control your breathing, you control your pace. If you could, now the problem with you is you can't get up and run around, but she says that you got all this adrenaline going. The best thing for you is to do some sort of physical activity. But if you're in a plane, you literally can't, you can't get up and run around. So I guess that's not an option.
But it's an accumulative effect, because I do 10 minutes of meditation every day. And meditation, what meditation does is it's going to, first of all, it's going to increase the size of left prefrontal cortex. Yeah. It's going to decrease the size of the amygdala. It's going to
well, it also trains your body. It trains you to calm down your sympathetic nervous system.
That's right. You get added growth in the insula area of the brain, which is body sensation awareness. So there's visualization techniques that you can do on the airplane when it's about a 20-minute ride up to altitude. And you can do visualization, but actually breathing is the biggest. So I make sure I take a deep breath, and then I have an anchor that associates
a psychological anchor. You're not carrying a big piece of metal.
No, that's correct. That's right. Thanks. that associates a circle of excellence. It associates a peaceful feeling of confidence. And I just say this anchor, which is make a fist, center my breathing, and say compete. Okay. And what I'm competing with against is my own internal dialogue that's freaking out. But by the time that I'm ready to exit the aircraft,
like doing a spiritual workout for you. Like part of the value of this exercise to you is the freak out and then getting in control, and then the reward is the skydiving.
I'm telling you, when I'm on the drive home, when I get home and I jump into my my hot tub, I've got the endorphins, I've got the adrenaline, I've got it's a very peaceful feeling. And then the other thing is I just celebrate being alive.
Mm-hmm.
because I did a day of skydiving. I'm alive. It was terrific,
That's wonderful.
and it definitely keeps you young. That's for sure.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, you hear the same thing from the polar bear dippers, people who go out in the cold water. I'm from Canada, so you probably hear more of it up here than down where you are. Um, let's go deeper into your topic here. Where would you like to go when talking about performance? I see a lot of your work around that. And did you draw from your work as a coach, and now you mostly help people in business?
Yeah, it's all from coaching. Who I am today is as a result of the experience that I had as a college football coach.
Okay.
And the most pronounced experience was at Cal State Fullerton. And so at Cal State Fullerton, it was all about, well, I always had a scientific approach. And when I was undergraduate at Rutgers, my degree was in health, and I had a scientific approach to health. When I coached and taught football and wrestling for 2 years in a high school in New Jersey. Then I went to graduate school at Springfield College in Massachusetts. Again, another research-oriented institution. That's where I had an opportunity to coach an Olympic gold medal winner in
Mm-hmm.
wrestling, Jeff Blatnick.
So
And
what was your scientific approach on this? You created a system for
well,
coaching?
let me get to the evolution of that, and then I'll share
Okay.
what that is. After 2 years, now working with Jeff Blatnick, I tell people, my claim is I was his coach, but the reality of that was he was my teacher. He was really my coach. When you work with someone who's the best in the world at what they do every day for 2 years, you get a crystal clear model, mentor of what excellence is. Because Jeff was the best in the world. How many times do you have an opportunity to work very closely with someone who's the best in the world at what they do? And you start to see these personality profiles. You start to see habits. You start to see routines that are common among people who are the best in the world at what they do. And the good news is they're all duplicatable.
Mm-hmm.
And so after 2 years there, then I got the head coaching football and wrestling at Caltech. Now, this is where it really started to develop because I had ability to research with a guy by the name of Roger Sperry. Roger Sperry on the staff at Caltech. He won the Nobel Prize in 1982 for his split brain research. And from there, I developed a way of getting athletes to tap into their talent and ability. We did some things at Caltech that had never been done before. I was only there for a year. Then I went to Cal State Fullerton. Cal State Fullerton, this was our athletic ability. This was everybody else we played. The only way you're going to win, I mean, we went to play University of Arizona, and you walk into the airport, says, "Welcome to Wildcat football." Our guys were in awe. And their newspaper that day said, "Wildcats to host Cal State Disneyland," they called us. Cal State Disneyland. Can you believe that? And we almost beat them. It was 16-13. We were leading in the fourth quarter. We couldn't hold it. But anyway, the only way you're going to win when everybody else is better than you are is to tap in to the highest level of your God-given talent and ability, catch your opponents when they don't. That's what happened. We won 2 conference championships. That's how I got to become a speaker. I never thought I was going to be a speaker or a trainer or a coach. It was that experience. Then booster clubs asked us, say, "Can you do this for my salespeople? Can you speak to my company?" And then I left. And what it involves is teaching an athlete how to focus and how to have best effort one play at a time. One play at a time. How do you get them to block out
focus on your sandbox right now. Don't divide your focus amongst a million plays.
You're not worried about the score. You're not worried about the next play. You're worried about maximum execution right now.
Right.
And
Well,
we had.
how do you apply that to business when there's so many things in business where you really do have to multitask and
Well, you look at what's missing in business, and the core of what I do that's missing is accountability. Mm. And there needs to be, everybody talks about, you need to have begin with the end in mind. You need to have the precise plan. You need to, and that's a key. You have to have the precise plan that backs up into the next 7 days. Here's what my commitments are. Here's what the activities are going to do. And also, looking at here's what is in the way, here are the obstacles, and then negotiating with that 1 week at a time. But then there needs to be something that a lot of people don't like to talk about, and that is the consequence for non-performance. There's got to be accountability. And the reason is this: it's about brain activation. There's agreement worldwide that we have a narrow bandwidth of perceptual ability as human beings. And so we take this narrow bandwidth and it defaults to seeing our threats, so that a genetic code for everyone is to avoid pain and seek comfort. So I ask my audience as well.
You're also in the view that everyone is going to do far more to avoid the pain than ever to be comfortable.
Well, if you Google negativity bias, a doctor by the name of Richard Hansen comes up. Richard Hansen's research says that we have 5 times as many neurons to see negativity than we do to see the positive, to see opportunity.
Well, that actually gels with a lot of what I talk about on the show a lot is that, you know, we're really cavemen in a suit and tie. You know, we are no different from the hunter gatherers, and if there is something, I even talk like getting into the memory techniques that I teach. The reason why they work is because it's a survival mechanism. Your brain is able to memorize something without repetition if it taps into that survival mechanism. And if it doesn't, then you'll be damn pressed to try to memorize something. So at every single level, your brain is geared towards survival, and in our civilized world, we're so far from that. We're into performance. And you have to put in I guess a note of danger. We need risk, we need danger in order to bring out the best in us.
Well, we are perfectly genetically coded to thrive in a world that no longer exists.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we just everything from the most primitive fight or flight response is inappropriately cued.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody cuts you off and you get upset. Where'd that come from? My life's not in danger.
Yeah.
Somebody says something rude. Where'd that come from? Well, 5 times as many neurons to see the negative and to weave a story about how terrible, horrible, and awful it is. Mm-hmm. And so the result of that is very fatiguing, mm-hmm. and people become just closed into average performance. And then we live our lives in resignation, believing that we're doing the best that we can be doing, right, and never knowing the difference.
So it's one thing to think of this intellectually, and I have to admit that I'm way on the scale with you right now. But I'll also be transparent and let people know that I struggled with this for many years. I called it the poverty mentality. Some might be offended by that term, but I'm just speaking about my own experience, not poverty in general. But I came from a very poor household, very, we struggled for a lot of things. And what came along with that was a feeling of just not deserving financial success. So when I had a situation where, I could make $4,000 in a day, I thought I was a criminal, and like people were falling all over themselves to pay me to do this. I thought I was a horrible person. I mean, I consciously, I didn't. Consciously, I thought, hey, I finally reached some of the success that I wanted to do. But subconsciously, I felt like I didn't deserve it. And for about a month, I was so depressed, I couldn't pick up a phone, couldn't do a sales call for the life of me until I had spent that money. It was a lot of time, right? And I still struggled with that. And I did, mantras and goal setting, a bunch of other stuff. And finally, I think, kicked myself of it. But it took years, possibly over a decade, to do that. And I'm a motivated person. I'm a focused person. I read all the books and do all the stuff, but there's this big part inside you that it's hard to talk to. So how do you fix that?
Well, you've really just described a brain activation. Mm-hmm. So when you start to think of having success and doing these activities that continue to have success, and you get this brain activation, this neural assembly that says, I'm a fraud, or it says, I don't deserve this.
Really what it was is just I lost the motivation, so I didn't know how to fight that. Is that I just what's the point of, like, it was so weird. Like every time I was starving, I was so motivated, but every time I had a big check in my hand, a bunch of success, I felt I lost all motivation to get up. And I'm not the only one. This is obviously proven in behavioral neuroscience, and it's one of the reasons why people speak out against the BTI, the basic income and things like that. Or,
So the approach that I would take is that the reason why that happens is not of interest to me. I mean, there's not as much.
you don't care about the history. It's just like, let's deal with the
That's right.
present, right?
I'm looking at. I mean, there are other places you can go to look at the history and review what happened in your childhood. That this is the belief that pattern that you have, but we can rewire the brain through behavior contracting because what you need, what I would coach somebody to do is, I make this specific commitment. What is it you want? What do you want? What does that mean for this week? What do you need to do this week? Tell me specifically. Look at your, like I said earlier, look at your circumstances. Do you have the time? Do you have, take into consideration that you don't like doing this? And like Gabrielle Odigen says, whoop, the wish, the outcome, the obstacle, your plan, right? And so you look at, what is it that you want to do this week? What are you committed to do this week? Now we need to manage pain threshold, pain observation. And I say, okay, you say you're going to make 20 calls a day. Pay me $1,000 if you don't do it. And I'm going to use that money. I'm not going to send it to a positive charity. I'm going to buy gas for my airplane. That's what I'm going to do.
So now the weird thing about that is I did do a form of that, but I had a reward. Every time I had a punishment, it made me more depressed, more listless, and then I would end up triggering the punishment because I was less capable. So I was always just frozen, collapsed. This is like I say this, kind of like this is my former self. Obviously, I'm wildly successful now. I'm actually one of the few people I know that I don't have to work again in my life if I didn't want to. I can live off investments and things like that. So I'm very proud of what I've accomplished, but I want to see more people get to that level. And I've seen so many people kind of frozen by this, but it's kind of like it's the cycle of a depressed person where they're depressed. And if you tell them, well, if you don't get up, then if you don't pay the rent, then you're going to be kicked out. That makes them more depressed, and it's tougher for them to get off their butt and pay the rent. You know what I mean? So, but I did find, more to what you're saying, I did find that that the negative motivation in this case was counter to effectiveness, but the positive motivation, rewards, actually did help pull me out of it. And then a lot of mantras and internal work over time cheered me up.
That would be an exception.
Yeah.
Because look at Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize on what I'm about to say, prospect theory. He says that we are motivated to keep what we already have as opposed to get something else.
Yeah.
So
I think the depression is just a unique thing where it lies to you, and negativity feeds on its own.
That's right. Then in that case, I defer to what works.
Yeah.
So if a reward is what works in your case, then you would use a reward.
Well, I mean, there might be somebody listening who's in the exact same boat as me, and the opposite would work. So I think the biggest problem is for the longest time is you don't know what you don't know. I didn't know that it was a problem. I was just feeling a certain way until I see it happen again and again, where my ambition kind of triggered, feeling bad. Which I think it's really important to get to youth and to let them know that they shouldn't be ashamed of ambition. They should try as hard as they can. They deserve to achieve everything that they want to achieve, and really to not be scared of big numbers. I've known of a lot of people who have screwed up a job interview, screwed up a lot of different things because they were afraid they would succeed, not afraid they would fail.
Well, I tell you, this is the thing about that separates us. This is why we're at the top of the food chain. Our ability to have language, our ability to form concepts, and there's a downside to that too, in that we can just get this devastating negative internal dialogue that can completely paralyze us with the narration that we give to things. So we can definitely abuse. So this is where the acceptance commitment therapy, if you're familiar with that, where that comes in. Just accept, okay, I have these limiting thoughts, and rather than fight them, all right, I have these limiting thoughts. Thank you for caring, but I don't have to accept them all as being true.
That's actually very much like the Stoic approach. Like the bad things are going to happen. All the stuff that happened in your past, that happened. It's a real thing. Good things will happen. They'll usually happen in equal measure. And and just accept that life is not perfect, it's never going to be, and that's just from your perspective. Because from somebody else's perspective, those bad things could very well be good things for them.
And also part of that is what you're attached to.
Yeah.
And realizing the Buddhist principle that everything is impermanent.
Yeah. So this actually leads into one of the questions I ask a lot of people. I want to know, because you're about performance and positive and negativity, drivers. What is the greatest setback or challenge you've ever experienced in your life or your professional life? That you really had to struggle to overcome.
Oh, greatest setback that I've had probably would have to be early after leaving coaching. I got I had a series of things happen all at the same time, simultaneously. I was going through a divorce.
Mm.
I had hired a office manager from another a competing speaker, who this wound up not working out, and she sued me for wrongful termination
Whoa.
and won. And I had a very huge audit from the IRS, which taught me a lesson: pay your taxes, and that was going on at the same time.
You want to say a number?
No, I'll leave.
Okay, well,
I'll leave that
that.
unsaid.
So,
but
so your financial, your personal life, and also your professional life.
Everything going on at the
jeopardy.
same time, and I wound up. This is back in 1980, 1980 something. Might have been 89. I don't remember exactly. I hope that ring's not too annoying.
No, that's fine.
But it's. I wound up having to go bankrupt.
Wow.
I wound up having to losing multiple properties that I had in California, and
so you built up quite a thing.
So I lost everything.
Very tall and crashed.
I lost everything. Now, the good news about that is built it all back up, because I'm not my possessions. It's the mindset, it's the personality and the drive and the passion, and I was able to replace everything and go even further. So that was a pretty big setback all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And again, just an opportunity to learn.
How did you get past that? Just did you take some time off? Did you?
No. Well,
or did you just start working?
I've always exercised, so that's a big stress handler.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't. I didn't know this about how to eat. I learned this about 7 years ago about how to eat, and how the poisons of flour and sugar are devastating to inflammation, to health. I learned that 7 years ago, and it was just a matter of just doing the same things: mindset, planning, executing, accountability, passionate about what I'm doing. And I don't, I forgive myself for those mistakes that I made, but that was a pretty big setback. But then again, opportunity to continue to grow new, just like a forest fire. Everything's devastated and grows back.
Mm-hmm. So, along with those lines and overcoming setback, tell me about Jeff Blatnick. You coached him to Olympic gold medalist. He overcame Hodgkin's disease. Tell me about how he overcame that.
Well, Jeff, it was interesting because I had an opportunity to coach him both two sports, wrestling and football. Jeff was a small heavyweight. He only weighed, I believe, about 240 or 250 as a heavyweight. And I was one of the bigger guys. I'm 40 pounds, 60 pounds less now than I was back then. I was one of the bigger guys in the gym. So my coaching Jeff meant that I worked out with him every day. In other words, I was a body led to slaughter every single day. And I wrestled 1 year at Rutgers University. So, but anyway, it wasn't a matter. I used to think nobody can pin me until working with Jeff. Then it became, how fast will he pin me? That's the transition. But anyway, and working with Jeff, I was able to observe his approach. What was his approach? And he approached everything that we did with all in effort, all in, whether it was practice, whether it was a match. His approach was everything was full tilt. Never once did he think, who is this guy? Only wrestled 1 year. I don't, how can he help me? His attitude was that he knows he's good and he knows he has weaknesses. And he needs coaching. He needs to improve. That was his attitude. Never once did he think he was beyond it all. Never once did he think, what do I need to do this basic drill that the rest of the team is doing? I'm so much better than the rest of the team. So it was what I learned from Jeff was it was a consistency of routine, an automation of a routine. Same approach, same mindset. And again, it's duplicatable. Our entire team was better because they were around him.
Yeah. Well, something else I want to ask you about is it also goes in kind of the stoic thing because it seems like we're kind of going in that direction. It's a big inspiration behind a lot of what we now think of as like positive psychology or taking responsibility and stuff. Um, One thing that I really learned from this practice is the difference between goals and habits. And goals sometimes were motivational, sometimes not. But habits I found are a much better indicator of success personally. What do you think about that?
I've never made that differentiation. The habits, the routine, are really the foundation. And the goals would be, if you look at the tree, the goals would be the branches that are
Yeah.
coming off.
Well, I just mean like life is continuous. So it's not that you should never have a goal or goals are terrible necessarily. Of course, you want to win a championship or something, but the better team is the one that shows up and the better player is the one that wakes up at 5 in the morning every day, make sure they get to bed at night
Right,
at 9:30.
right.
I'm talking about
That's right.
a personal like scheduling their time and things like that, what you eat. It's the daily habits
That's
that
right.
make you much more that are much more of an indicator of success than when somebody sets a goal and I personally found I stopped focusing on what's that final goal and I started focusing more on like on that little sandbox on just what am I doing now, what's my habit now, and developing some really good habits, and it changed my life, certainly my professional life
Well,
and
yeah,
my health as well.
I'm right with you. We set the target, and then we get back and focus on what am I doing right now. And
Mm-hmm.
as a football coach, and I teach this in companies also, it's process, not outcome.
Mm-hmm. That's another way to say it. Yeah.
It's you focus on what do I need to do today? What small step do I need to do today to move the needle forward?
Mm-hmm.
And who do I need to be today? And if I am the best version of myself today, this moment, and then that moment, and that moment, and then tomorrow, and the next day, the outcome always takes care of itself. At Fort, Cal State Fullerton, by the way, they just missed making it to the College World Series for the 19th time in baseball. They
Nice.
lost in extra innings to Washington, and they're known for baseball, not football. But anyway, if we didn't focus on beating the other team,
Mm-hmm.
we focused on did you give best effort this play 70 times. That's what we focused on, and then the outcome would take care of itself. We had a happy locker room when we lost to University of Arizona because we played the best we're capable of playing. And so it wasn't about the outcome, it was about the process, who we were one play at a time. And same thing in business. What are you doing right now? Is this the best you can be right in this moment, and then this moment, and this moment? And and then you add in the precise planning to that, and you add in the accountability. And then what you're doing is you're setting yourself up, you're setting the conditions to be the best you can be. Now, here's something that you and I can't give someone. You ready for this? You can't give them the desire to be the best that they can be.
Absolutely.
That is something that's a hiring issue. And people ask me, can you motivate anyone? Well, that gives you the assumption that some people are not motivated. My opinion is, and this is based in research, is that there's no such thing as an unmotivated person. Now, it's about what they're in reference to. Somebody might be in reference to how tough their day is and how much disappointment that they have and how much
Mm-hmm.
rejection that they're getting. And they might be exhausted with that kind of a reference. But all of a sudden, they smell smoke, they see flames, they jump up, they grab their favorite kid, they run out of the house, they go from lethargic to hyper because what did they do? What was different? They changed what they paid attention to, and that's changing brain activation. And that's the key. That's
Placing
the
their focus.
key. The key is to be able to influence what you're focused on.
Well, and it's interesting that you could say that you can motivate anybody, but they have to want it. You know, And it sounds kind of odd to say it that way because then you're not really motivating anybody; they're motivating themselves. But that's like the old Zen parable about that.
No,
But
Dave,
you could say that about anything. You could say that somebody you can't make somebody healthy. You can't make them go to the doctors. They have to want to go to the doctors. You can't. You know
this
what I
this
mean?
is this is the prevailing mystery. And let's talk about flour and sugar. Let's talk about the research is very substantial. Flour and sugar are the poisons. And I'll tell somebody, hey, I can teach you exactly how to eat exactly so that this is going to be your formula. First 5 feet of height, give yourself 100 pounds. Each inch taller, men give yourself 7 pounds per inch. Women give yourself 5 pounds per inch. You will be plus or minus 5 within that range. I guarantee that if you will do what I'm going to teach you to do. And most people won't do it.
Yeah.
They won't do it. They would rather resign, live in resignation, and be 40 pounds overweight and have these
Well, I
diabetes.
still have faith in humanity, and I think that a lot of people are on a different journey, and it takes them a while to find that journey. In the same way that I wanted to do it, but I couldn't make myself do it. I think there's a lot of people out there like that, and I also think there's a lot of people who could get themselves to do it, and they don't quite want to. They haven't found their battle that gets their heart pumping. But I've seen it happen to a lot of people in my life. I know of one person. I'm not going to mention his name, but he would not be what I would consider an ambitious person for years. But when he got the right lady in his life, and now they're talking about family potentially, man, he got a whole bunch of ambition, big fire into
Well,
his butt to get moving.
that's a huge key is having a
Yeah.
purpose, the purpose and the mission.
So I think it depends on the person, it depends on the time, and everyone's on a journey. But we want to have messages like this out for people, and hopefully they find this when they're ready. And I'm also ready to end this. We're come to the end of our time here. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Definitely some great insights. Let everybody know the name of your book and how to get a hold of you.
Oh, the book is 1.2% Factor. And my website, easy to know, is my name, bobdavies.com.
Right.
DAV as in Victor.
Oh, they'll see it. They'll see it in the credits.
Okay.
Yeah.
So send an email. My email is info@bobdavies.com. If you want to do a challenge, tell me something that you resist doing. Put $100 fine on it. If you don't do it within 7 days, I'll hold you accountable to that. See what happens.
They'll owe you $100 though. I don't know about that.
Well,
if I want to voluntarily get it.
Well, they won't owe me $100 if they do what they said they would do.
That's right. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure, and you take care. And just to hear you speak and also to talk to you today has been a pleasure. So,
Dave, I'm a fan of what you're doing, and it's nice to find you and like-minded thinking. So thanks for having me.
Hey, man, you're definitely a brains behind it. Thanks for being on the show.